Welcome to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled you're tuning in today because we're going to completely dismantle one of the most deeply held myths in the entire business world. It's a myth you've probably internalized without even realizing it, the idea that the best product always wins. Well, spoiler alert, it doesn't. Today, we're diving into undeniable data and historical case studies that prove exactly why striving to just be better is a massive trap. Instead, we're going to break down the exact playbook for finding a specific category where your business can be absolutely first.
Okay, let's jump right in with a little trivia question. This perfectly illustrates the cognitive trap of competing on quality alone. So, everyone knows Charles Lindbergh, right? The first person to fly the Atlantic Ocean solo. But who was the second? Take a second. Really try to pull that name out of your brain. It's pretty much impossible, isn't it?
Well, the answer is Burt Hinkler. And here's the crazy part, the real kicker. Burt was arguably a way better pilot than Charlie. He flew faster, he consumed less fuel, he had a demonstrably superior process all around. And yet history has completely forgotten him. Being a better pilot meant absolutely nothing for his legacy, simply because he was second. And that right there brings us to a foundational rule of marketing known as the law of leadership. Put simply, it is better to be first than it is to be better. Honestly, getting into the consumer's mind first is infinitely more powerful than waiting around for a market to develop just so you can jump in later with a superior product. People are creatures of habit. They stick with what they've got and they remember the firsts.
But we need to add a really vital layer to that rule. It's called the law of the mind. Let's look at the MIT's Altair 8800. Introduced back in 1974, it was technically the world's very first personal computer. But the Altair is long gone. Apple, on the other hand, introduced the Apple II in 1976, and they totally won. Why? Because being first in the marketplace only matters if it allows you to get into the consumer's mind first. Apple captured the mind share. Ultimately, marketing is a battle of perceptions, not a battle of products.
So if you actually want to win, you have to fundamentally shift how you think about what you offer. See, most companies operate on what we call brand-oriented thinking. They're constantly asking, how is my brand better? But that's a flawed, highly defensive mindset, mostly because consumers' minds are already made up about who the leader is. Instead, we need category-oriented thinking. We need to start asking, what category is this product first in? People are always open to what's new, even when they completely ignore what claims to be, quote-unquote, better. Which leads us directly to the law of the category. The rule is simple. If you aren't the first in a category, you've got to create a new category that you can be first in. Let's look back at our aviation example. Amelia Earhart wasn't the first or even the second person to fly the Atlantic solo. She was actually the third, but you know her name because she was the first woman to do so. She created a brand new category where she could be first, and because of that, she became an absolute legend. And creating a new, highly specific niche, that is a remarkably repeatable playbook used by some of the biggest brands in the world. Think about it. Dell couldn't be the first personal computer, so what did they do? They became the first to sell computers over the phone. Or take Heineken. They completely own the imported beer market in America. So instead of trying to formulate a better imported beer, Anheuser-Busch created Michelob, the very first high-priced domestic beer. You literally just have to find that specific differentiator that matters to a specific group of people and claim it.
Now, this concept goes a step further when we look at the law of the ladder. Consumers naturally rank brands on a mental decision-making hierarchy, just like rungs on a ladder. Take the classic rent-a-car industry. Hertz is on the top rung. Avis is second, National is third. If you're hanging out on a lower rung, you simply cannot use the marketing strategy of the leader. If Avis suddenly claims they're the finest in rent-a-cars, consumers just won't believe them, because their mental ladder firmly says Hertz is number one.
So, what did Avis actually do? They did the unthinkable. They openly admitted their position on the ladder. They shifted their entire message to, Avis is only number 2 in rent-a-cars. So why go with us? We try harder. And consumers loved this candor. It aligned perfectly with the data that was already sitting in their heads. By simply acknowledging their specific position, rather than falsely claiming to be the absolute best, Avis became highly profitable as a deeply credible number 2.
But, okay, what if you don't just want to survive as number 2? What if you want to aggressively steal market share? Well, that requires the law of the opposite. Think of it like a seesaw. Wherever the leader is strong, there is a massive opportunity for a number 2 to completely turn the tables. You don't try to emulate the leader. You discover their essence and present the exact opposite. You basically weaponize their greatest strength and turn it right into a weakness.
Here is exactly how that played out in the real world. Coca-Cola's greatest strength was its 100-year history. It was the old, reliable, established classic, right? Well, Pepsi brilliantly turned that tradition into a huge liability by targeting the youth market. They positioned themselves as the choice of a new generation. So if old people drank Coke, young people drank Pepsi. Pepsi didn't waste time trying to be a better classic cola. They positioned themselves directly against the leader's strength to capture literally everyone who didn't want the default option.
Now, as you build out your own category, you absolutely have to rely on the law of focus. This is all about burning a single, specific word into your prospect's mind. You have to sacrifice the urge to be everything to everyone. Seriously, think about it. FedEx sacrificed all other delivery options just to own the word overnight. Volvo owns safety. Crest owns cavities. You must pick a simple, available word that no competitor has a lock on and make it 100% yours.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. You're sitting there like, come on, all the good categories and words are already taken? But that's actually not true at all, thanks to the law of division. Over time, large markets naturally divide into clusters of smaller markets. Computers split into mainframes, mini-computers, PCs, and laptops. Cars split into luxury, compact, minivans, and sports cars. Categories don't combine, they constantly fragment. And what that means is the market is continuously creating brand new opportunities and tiny niches for you to be first in. So how do you tactically execute this today? Well, the sources point to HubSpot as the modern gold standard for this. By creating the category of inbound marketing, HubSpot didn't just launch another software product. They identified a massive shift in how people were buying things online. They realized consumers were ignoring traditional ads and aggressively searching for content instead, so they built an entire category around that exact shift. When you successfully identify and create a category like this, it sharpens your internal focus, it builds massive awareness, and it creates a highly defensible moat around your business because you literally dictate the terms of the market conversation.
According to Sapphire Ventures, there are 3 key steps to executing this kind of category creation. First, identify the disease. You have to look really closely at your industry and find the unaddressed pain point or that subtle shift in consumer behavior that the legacy giants are totally ignoring. You're hunting for that specific gap where the old way of doing things is just failing. Second, be self-serving but never self-centered. What does that actually mean? Well, if you go out there claiming you're the only solution in the world, you just sound like a tone-deaf sales pitch. You actually need to carve out roles for your competitors and legacy solutions within your vision. You want the rest of the industry to weigh in because their voices are what ultimately legitimize the problem you've identified.
And finally, step 3, you have to treat this whole thing like a political campaign. Getting a new category elected in the minds of consumers requires 12 to 18 months, or, honestly, even more, of relentless, consistent execution against a single idea. You'll definitely need to vary your anecdotes and your marketing channels, but your core message? That cannot change. And here's the secret. Right when you are getting utterly sick of repeating your rationale is usually the exact moment the market finally starts listening. Do not lose focus and pivot to the next new thing right as your category is taking hold.
Which brings us to our final thought. The overarching lesson from all these laws of marketing is a total mindset shift. Stop wasting your energy trying to convince the world that you have a marginally better product than the entrenched market leader. It's a losing battle. Instead, challenge yourself with a completely new question. First, what? Find the precise difference that matters. Find the exact category where you can lead, and then own it completely. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I challenge you to go find your category today.